Hey everyone, welcome back to Iron Bay Research. This is episode 10?
11.
11. We're getting there, making progress. Um, Whenever I think of 11, I always think of our class logo's 2011. Class so nice, we're number one twice. Kind of cheesy. Anyways, moving on. So last episode we were talking a little bit about you graduating from college. Congratulations, getting your first job. But now we had a really big decision that was weighing on us, and I think a lot of couples go through this. Is I was living in Georgia, you were living in Virginia. We both had two different jobs, and we were making the decision to what do we do, right?
At that point, we discussed a little bit last time that we made the decision to live apart at that time because we knew when you were done with the military, we wanted to continue our life in DC.
Yeah.
And we did kind of at that time determine that you were probably not going to continue with the military.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you're right.
We made that decision, which
To not
was really
re-enlist.
relieving. Yeah, because I think this is a rabbit hole in of itself. Before we continue on, is I think one, it wasn't what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
In some different ways, and you can share as much as you do and don't want to on that. But I think it was a relief because that we were on the same page. Because going into it, everyone who had done the military thing, spouses, obviously your mom and dad were huge players in telling us their experience.
Yeah.
And, the divorce alone, I don't think weighed too much into it, a little bit, but it was more their time together during the military. Because a lot of the marriage was outside of the military. They were still fine.
Yeah.
But during, everyone said how hard it was. And, when you're 20, you're like, yeah, whatever. But we love each other, so it's not going to be hard for us. Yeah. And we found out very quickly it was very hard. And not only, it was easy for us in a way that we both had our distractions, but I think hard in a way of we didn't like what we saw of other married couples in the military that we were associated with.
Yeah.
I think it was, and this is not to knock anyone that does make that choice in their life. It's great for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
But for us, we wanted a little bit more involved family unit that was a little bit more traditional where Bryce was present. And I think you wanted that too. You wanted to be more present. And I was very thankful for that because I didn't realize going into it. I was like, oh yeah, I can do the military wife thing. I'll be fine. But I think it was a huge relief off my shoulders when you were like, I don't want to continue on. I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's
funny.
funny.
I was not into it.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to talk about that because I kind of forgot about that whole thing, but I guess we can we can drive with that.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, it's weird because I think anyone listening, you could quickly take this as a knock on the military life.
Sure, yeah.
And I would say just hang tight and see what we're talking about. And I feel, actually, no, I know that a lot of people that were in that lifestyle will know exactly what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
think they can agree. And it's,
absolutely.
I think whenever you look at your surroundings, you have to look at the patterns. Mm-hmm. And, obviously there are exceptions to the rule, but it's, when you see a pattern, it's like that is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I have never met more people in my life that were like in their early 20s and already divorced, on their second divorce. It was like a startling percentage of people.
Yeah, we knew that was a stigma going into it, but we didn't realize until we were in it. It was about 90%, I would say, of people we knew.
Yeah.
Which, it was startling. We were like, oh, it's not only a stigma, it's like a fact.
And I would say even more so in the fighting units because they deployed a lot. Like,
sure.
My whole gig with the military was like I wanted to deploy. That was the goal. I wanted to join the fight.
Sure.
That was it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do that, you have to be selective of what units you join. I joined the Spec Ops unit. So there was a lot of deployment. And so that was kind of the social contract, if you will, of I'll make the sacrifice, get paid shit money.
Yeah.
As long as you deploy me, as long as I'm able to do the job I want to do, we'll put the family through sacrifice.
Yeah.
But during the time frame, the war was kind of dying down.
Yeah.
And so the way I saw it was, I am putting my family through all this just anxiety and stress for nothing, right? Because it's no
for yourself.
Yeah, it's like if I'm deploying and doing the job, that's great. I'll do that.
Yeah,
that's a fair bargain. But this one, we weren't doing that. It was just a different time. This was 2012-ish, so Afghanistan was kind of drawing down.
Sure.
And so the way I saw it is, I didn't think the war would continue, and it actually didn't. It ended.
The juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah, I was like, the chances of me actually doing this job are very low. Let's just get out. I don't want to do another 4 years and be. They call it a garrison army when you're just at home, and I didn't want that. And so,
and I think it served its purpose perfectly at the time in our life.
Yeah.
And the benefits that followed after, I think.
Yeah. Was able to scratch that itch.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it.
However, I think that it being apart, I'm sure, is hard in of itself. That's true, but I think more for, like you said, bringing up the fighting units, and specifically special operations, which you were.
Yeah.
It's the not knowing, the unknown for me as a partner. It's
I can
like
see that. Yeah.
Can't tell anyone anything. It's like they can't tell you anything, and it's just like
it's stressful.
Yeah, it is. You're just like I think anxiety comes from the unknown.
Oh,
I think for me, that was the biggest thing. It's like, we can be apart, fine. We can do that.
Yeah.
We've always done that.
Yeah.
But it's the unknown that's just, like, frustrating.
Oh, it drove me insane. There would be whole weeks where I wouldn't know if we were deploying the next week or next month.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind leaving, but it was just not knowing you're literally living your life day by day.
Right.
It was just not...
Yeah.
It was just very stressful for me.
Yeah,
like, mentally, even just...
Sure.
It's just like, I don't want
this. And I think we can end that on...
Yeah.
It is a sacrifice, those people that do it.
Yeah.
And that's amazing that they're able to.
Yeah.
We just realized we couldn't. And I think that's okay. We didn't want to.
Yeah.
We could have, but we would have been lying to ourselves thinking that was enough. We would have been settling.
Yeah, I didn't want to risk the marriage.
Yeah.
And I think anyone that doesn't think you are risking your marriage, I think you need to do a reality check. Like a hardcore reality check of just...
Agree.
I heard it from someone.
Like a marriage, how can a marriage sustain when one of the partners is gone every other year?
And not even the marriage just sustaining, like being married, but like being happily married. And I think there's a big difference.
Absolutely.
I think anyone that is not thinking that that's going to cause stress and you have to weigh that, I think you really need to look deep in yourself and think hard. Like, hey...
what am I doing this for? If it's for the money, why can't I make an equivalent elsewhere?
Yeah, if it's for the money, for this, for that. And that's what, for me, it's like, it wasn't for the money. I mean, the pay was shit. It was like, hey, I want to do an experience that I cannot do anywhere else.
Yeah.
And the second that experience wasn't happening, is the second it was like, well, there's nothing else here, right?
Yeah,
and so it made the decision, it was actually fairly easy.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad that I made it easy.
Yeah. So we can kind of shift.
Say that again.
It was very...
Bryce quit the military for me.
Yeah, you drama queen.
No.
So we could kind of...
unhappy and stressed.
Yeah, it was very stressful. So we can kind of shift back to... So we know for sure that I'm leaving, and the plan was to move back to Virginia.
In about a year and a half from that time.
Yeah. So that's why we're like, okay,
yeah.
What now? The way we thought it made sense for you to stay home and kind of like...
build a life for you to assimilate into when you were done.
Yeah, just so that we weren't... And it was a very fine... I mean, obviously we want to be together. Like that's a known, but it's like it was more of a financial choice.
Yeah,
of just like, hey, if we had to move down here, start a new job and move back, we were looking at it as weighing those options. So I guess we could talk into that of just like what options do you have to weigh?
Yeah, because
let's go through
I think that for us, we had already been living apart, so we were like, what's one more year and a half to be so much more financially set and good to go? Because if I were to move to Georgia with Bryce, depending on what job I would have gotten.
Yeah. And it was Benning, Georgia, so there's not like
it's not a Columbus. It's not a massive market for jobs, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But at that point, we would have both been having to start a new life completely and search for a job in DC where we wanted to move back with our family, and it just made sense to us why when you were going to be deployed anyways would I make a life in Georgia by myself when I could establish a life for us in the meantime where we were going to be after you were done. Save money, which my parents offered to help me out, and I could stay with them, which was amazing. And they didn't charge me anything, right? So I was just saving up all this money, starting a life for you to come back into when you got out. And I think that's kind of where the decision came from.
And I guess when you look at it from, it's just having financial overlap, right? So if you're looking at it, like, whenever I think of this, I think of climbers. I got a buddy who's a climber, and they always say, like, 3 points of contact. You know, when you're climbing, you don't want to let go of 2 points at one time, like your feet in your hand.
Yeah.
And so the way we were looking at it is, well, we always had to have a paycheck coming in. When you were in college, it was the military, and now you're out. We got 2 paychecks. But then once I would leave, we would lose one, but you still have your paycheck coming in. And we just wanted to have that safe overlap of continuity. Is that the right word?
I think a contingency.
Yeah, just a contingency plan of just the money always being secure. And so that was the thought process. So
especially when we knew he was going to be deployed. That was a big driver. It's like his unit, we were told, was getting deployed. So it's like, why would I move to Georgia? That's silly. To be by myself. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. So
and I got through your deployments emotionally way better when I was with my family. I was
but
busy,
you're just not
I was
alone.
Distracted. I had my family, friends, soccer. I was very well versed in soccer in that area because that's where I grew up. So it was easier to be away from you because I had all those things.
So I guess aside, well, I was wondering where to think of this conversation. I guess.
Yeah, you're going to have to ask me because I don't know.
So I guess let me ask this a different question. Because there are a lot of situations where people live apart. And it's like the money is good. Classic example is some people like, hey, I live in one town, my family lives in another because I don't want to uplift the kids.
I see.
And, so at what point, and I guess what are the factors to consider if you are a family that's living separate, not because of you guys don't like each other, but just because the money situation, like at what point does it make it worth it? So what do you have to consider? You have to consider, and we'll kind of ignore the emotional well-being because obviously you want to be together. I think it's what really makes the decision happen is when you're making so much more money in one situation that it makes sense to split. But I think a lot of people don't think about the little nuances.
Of your commute.
Of like, well, you flying to come see me, right? I mean, every chance you get, you're spending what? $500, $600 on plane tickets to go see each other?
Actually, I wasn't. That also weighed into our decision because my grandmother had worked for United and retired for United Airlines. And she was able to put me on her buddy pass for the year. So I flew standby for free. So I flew about, I think it was 10 to 15 times from DC to Atlanta. In the same summer for free. So that is still decision.
That's a weighing for it to happen. If we didn't have that, we might have not done
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. That's the point I'm making.
So you're right. So you have that. Obviously, I was living on base and you were living with your parents. But the big decision is, hey, we need to pay for 2 roofs. Right. So you have to pay.
Because you did have to have a place to stay when. When you came home, and unfortunately, with the military, I think is this true? You had to be single to live in the barracks. You could not live in the barracks while being married.
I mean, there was like some grayish area, but essentially, if you were like an E4 or below. And you were single, you were given the barracks option. If you were an E5, which is a sergeant or above, and that's describing to the ranks, you could either live on base, on a house, or you were given a stipend to go rent or pay for mortgage on off base. If you were an officer, there was no barracks. You just got either on-base housing or off-base
housing.
So
I guess I'm just trying to make the point is in our decision to answer your
I had my housing taken care of. It was just you.
There was no way for us to save money there because BAH was the only option because we were married.
Yeah. And
we had to kind of do that.
Yeah, and I lived on base, so it wasn't like, it was an easier choice. So I guess I'm trying to like not look at our situation because there were a lot of details that work, but maybe just someone in general, just like what to consider. Like I think if you're only making a small pay bump, let's say you're making 60 and for you to live separate, you're making 70.
Sure.
I find it very rare in situations where it makes sense to live separate unless you have a lot of things going for you.
Right.
And we did. You were able to fly down for free with the buddy pass. I wasn't even going to be there. Right. You had a place to stay with your parents. Like there's a lot of pros that made that decision work, but I think in a lot of other situations there are a lot of cons that aren't. Housing being the main one.
Yeah, what about the situation where we talked about gig work on one of our previous episodes and there's people that do contracting, any type of contracting, having people, electricians, maybe plumbers, going to a place of need during a time, depending on how long their deployment is, to wherever they're going in the country.
I think in like oil riggers a lot.
They work for 3 months, they work for 6 months. I think, again, it's an emotional view, but I think you have to have that talk with your partner of, okay, I'm going to be making $100K in 6 months. That's a lot, right?
Yeah.
To someone who's a blue collar worker, because that would mean you could take the rest of the year off if you wanted to.
Oh yeah.
Depending on your lifestyle that you sustain, but I think not talking about that with your partner is. Because then your partner has to stay behind, and if you have kids, they're taking care of the household, the kids, without any break or help, depending on the situation. So I think that there are a lot of things to consider financially, which is what Bryce is getting at.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time participating because I think it is a lot emotional, even maybe more so than financial.
That's a good point.
I think that financial can be emotional.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So because it's like, you have to consider this, and that, and at what point is it like you're being selfish?
Yeah.
Why do we need to sustain that lifestyle for you to be gone for 6 months?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like, to me.
Well, let me back up the emotional comment. It was emotional. The emotional comment was for our specific situation because we obviously wanted to be together.
No, I know, but I'm saying that.
Oh, in general,
you would have to say all of these material, financial pros outweigh the emotional cons, and at what point does that happen? Divorce.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. It kind of always comes back to that, and that's what's tough for me.
That's a good point.
Is if I wanted that, I would have just married someone online that could send me $10,000 a month that I didn't fucking know.
That's a really.
You know what I mean?
That's a good point. Okay.
I just think I just think that that's a different type of marriage that you would have to both willingly sign up for. Like, hey, I'm cool with not seeing you half the year and sustaining this lifestyle and taking care of the kids and blah, blah, blah. That's just a different relationship.
So let me walk this back a little bit. Because now we're getting into specifics of and I'm saying a better way.
I'm getting emotional.
No.
I think it is emotional.
Well, no. I have a good answer for you.
Okay.
I have a really good answer for you. And I think it just has to do with just delayed gratification, right? And I think that if you can kind of look at our lifestyle too, we really.
Oh, okay.
I think it's you know where I'm getting to. It's like we really were like, you know what? For the first 5-10 years of our marriage, let's put our heads down and just grind. So that we can relax a bit more later in life.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of jobs that you travel away and they pay better because it comes with emotional baggage. I'm not only whenever a company is expanding overseas, hey, for a pay raise, you're going to go overseas to somewhere, England or Australia, or let's say you're working a blue collar job. Yeah. Hey, in construction, we usually make 70 grand a year. Hey, for 120, we'll send you out to the desert doing something, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But the point is, I think it is a good thing to just get to a really good financial spot to grind it out for maybe a couple years to maybe where you're separate. Yeah. If that's your only way of seeing a pay raise. But I think
that's fair.
As long as you make a map and say, hey, I'm gonna do this for 2 or 3 years. We're gonna get a really good financial spot, and then I'm gonna kind of roll it back.
Yeah.
And be like, we have a buddy that does that.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that real fast. So I got a buddy, not gonna name names, but he did security, and the pay was really good. It was like 1 month on, 1 month off, and I think in a lot of situations he was making, for that 1 month or so he'd be gone, he'd be making 2 or 3 times as much money as he would back home, and he would do like little 1 month spurts.
Sure.
And I think doing that really put them in a good financial spot, so that he didn't have to do that forever. And yes, it sucked in the time being, the wife and dad, kid, and everything, but when they were done with that stressful time, they had a nice cushion.
Yeah.
So I think doing it with the plan to have it stop makes sense.
And I think, though, I think finances and emotions, like we had talked in one of our first or second episodes, why are we even having these conversations? Because like we said about how finance drives divorce. Yeah. Because I think money can be emotional. Yeah. There's facts to it, which we will get to. Yeah. There's a lot of facts to it. There's a lot of things to take into consideration, but a lot of the considerations we talk about, I think, end up being emotional. And what you're talking about, like you said, with the cushion, these are facts and everything, but it all comes down to, now we're getting like existential and philosophical, is hope. I mean, that's an emotion. And
it's the hope to better your life.
Yeah, the only reason you have motivation or you drive to do things is to hope that it works out positively in the end. So I could see your point. Like, yeah, absolutely. I did sign on for that when we decided that I was going to live away from you for a year. Yeah. But at that time, it was kind of an easy sign on because it was just me, myself, and I. I didn't have to worry about
And there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. We'll live together in a year and a half.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, I think the light at the end of the tunnel is a big navigator for those decisions. Yeah. And if you don't have one, is it sustainable? I'd say not without a really rocky road.
Yeah, I think if it's just endless of just, next week. And that's I think people like having a plan because it gives you something. Hey, we're going to save up for this house. Hey, we're going to save up for this.
Task-oriented. They want to complete things off.
And when you just put it out, hey, you're going to work for 40 years and retire, that's just so far off.
Yeah, sure.
And people are like, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? They're just trying to bring it closer to make it a bit more attainable, a bit more graspable.
I like that, yeah.
Is that a
and
word?
I think that's us, and my dad's going to hate this because he is the type of person that asks about a 5 and 10-year plan, which I think is fair. He's not wrong in asking that, and it is... I think it is good to say, where do I see myself at that time? But to be specific in that, I don't think it's attainable.
I don't think anyone can know.
We've planned our life more in, this is what we want to achieve in a year. This is what we want to achieve the year after or in 6 months from now. And then the rest will come. The 5 to 10 year goal come from those smaller attainable
It's always just been be a bit better.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Sure.
Like whenever I'm in sales now, like it's always been do more sales next year, do more sales this year, get more educated, with investing, get better and smarter a little bit.
I don't know. I think we do set more specific goals than that sometimes.
But I mean,
obviously that's like in general.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't be specific in 5 years. What's the goal?
No,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think you just threw out a general thing to be better, and that's not. Yeah. You do actually set like maybe. I'm trying to think of a specific recent example of some. Very recently actually. We made the move to get out of real estate and to get into stock investing. Yeah. And that's something we said within a year. We want to sell all of our 7 properties that we owned separate from our home.
Yeah.
And we did that, and it was attainable.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
But I would say to that point is the year before we made that decision, the plan was to buy my real estate. So I just think that.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're getting at the same point. We're just
no, we are. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that your example, you gave a general example that wasn't attainable.
Yeah.
And I'm saying we do.
We just play it year by year.
Yeah.
Because I think your life is. I mean.
Yeah.
Frankie, like coming into our life, our daughter, like that was such a like whoa, this is all different.
Yeah.
So it's just. Yeah, I think we get the same thing. Just.
No, I know. Yeah. I'm just. I didn't like your example. It was shit. That's what I'm saying.
I think it's...
Your example was I said we set.
I think it's a good
It's
my example.
I said we set specific attainable goals, and Bryce said the goal is to be better. And that's not specific or attainable. So that's why I'm saying it was shitty. Anyways, continue. We're not saying the same thing. I'm calling you out, and it was crap.
My goal in 5 years is to be slightly better every year for 5 years.
Nice one. That's real specific and real attainable.
It's working-ish.
Anyways, so I think we beat that kind of with the dead horse. I don't think unless you can tell me right now, do you want me to ask you what you think the things you need to consider are financially for people that work? Because I'm lost there.
No,
I just didn't know. It sounds like you wanted that to go, but I don't think there's much more.
I thought it was
undress.
So to let you guys know, before we had this, we talk about what we want to talk about, and it never goes a plan. It's just always like because you realize like something in your mind is a better conversation and it ends up being just
like
shit.
How we thought talking about Bryce's dad's company was going to be an hour convo, and it was 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, you just the gas tank's empty. But I'll just end it with this. I think that me saying take the emotional out of context, that was for our situation because we were talking about like just weighing the financial stuff.
Oh yeah.
I do agree with you. Yeah, like I think if you're living separate, you have to weigh heavily on how long is it sustainable.
Yeah. And
really take that into account was like you gotta milk that cow for as much as you can, as fast as you can, and then kind of go back to being together. I think it's worth it if it's going to significantly enhance your life in the future. Like a lot of people would be like, hey, I'll do this, I'll make double the amount of money for a couple of years, and then we'll buy a house. That's great. If you're doing it endlessly, hey, I'm going to do this forever, I think take a step back and pause.
And I think actually, to your point, and maybe what you were trying to discuss was what some people often might overlook is what you're saying. Is they might think it's worth it to do this thing apart, but they're not looking at your commute costs, your stay costs when you're away, if the company's not paying, if it's 1099 and it's out of pocket. You know, it's like, they're just seeing the big fancy check, but they're not seeing all
the enhanced expenses.
The expenses that it takes to do that thing. So it's like, is it really cost effective to do this big fancy paycheck that's far away?
You're making $40K more, but you got to spend 20 more on
so you're really only making 10 more in the end. Is that worth being away from your family? You know, so I think to your point, that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, I like that. I think we can kind of push on from here.
So
and go back to the
to wrap that up, Bryce and I were at that decision, so that's why I stayed in DC. I was working my new job for 4 months. We talked a little bit about that, and then. Actually, it was, I think I worked that job for 4 months. And that
was George Mason Mortgage, right?
Yeah, so month 3-ish into my job, I got a call from Bryce. He was very excited. He wasn't deploying for the next year.
Yeah.
So that threw a wrench in our plan. So it was like, well, shit. Now it makes it even harder to be away for you for a year knowing that you're only a couple states away.
Yeah.
You know, it was easy to know he was going to be in Afghanistan for like the whole next year and training and but he was like, I just found out I'm not going.
Yeah.
And it probably won't go again.
Yeah. Because I was going to get out soon.
Yeah, so we were like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I I've always had issues with breaking commitments. When I make a commitment, I'm like loyal to a fault almost.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt about this job I just had. I was like, oh my God, I feel like such a piece of crap because I committed to this job. I said I was in it. And I'm going to just quit 3 months in. I was just like, I can't.
Yeah.
You know, I was just like having such a hard time mulling that over. And I remember talking to my parents about it in our kitchen. I remember exactly where I was standing at the island, and my dad was sitting in one of the island bar stools.
Yeah.
And my mom was like doing dishes or something, and my dad was like, what are you stressing for? Like, what other decisions are there to weigh? And I was like, well, there's this and this and this. And my dad so plainly was like, none of that matters. Bryce is your family now.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit.
Yeah.
And then I put my 2 weeks in notice in the next day, and I made plans to move down to Georgia with Bryce.
Yeah. And then
it all went to shit.
Yeah, it all went to shit.
He deployed anyways, and I was by myself for 7 months in Columbus, Georgia.
Yeah. And so that just goes back into like the insanity of like trying to plan.
Yeah.
It just like that was just the final nail. Like, oh, this is stupid.
And that was when we were like, yeah, we're definitely getting out of the military. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I quit my job and I went down to Georgia with no job. I was like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
A girl that recently got pregnant down there that was in her husband was in Bryce's unit.
Yeah.
She talked me up to her boss at a car dealership.
I remember that. Yeah,
Auto Nation.
Yeah.
And she was like, I said, hey, my husband, realistically, he gets out in a year and I'm not going to be here, but I'll work my ass off for you for a year. And it was only $10 an hour.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, we'll take you on for a year. And it was great. They took me on for a year. I made $10 an hour, which was like a huge step down from what I was making in DC, but didn't even need a degree to do it.
Georgia price.
Yeah, it is what it is. I was like, I just need something to pass the time. We don't really need a lot of money right now. We just need something, and I need to stay busy and keep my mind working and my resume going.
Yeah.
So I did that, and Bryce ended up deploying for about 6 months or so. So
I don't remember how long that was.
In Columbus, Georgia, working this crappy job.
Yeah.
I made some really, really good friends. Shout out to Courtney and Caitlin. Made some really good friends at work.
Yeah.
And our friends who are really good friends now kept me going through deployment. They took me in.
Yeah.
JP and Leanna. So that was amazing. So it was a good year for me. It wasn't what we planned.
Yeah.
And it sucked because I think I personally had never been away from family or friends. I'd never truly been like on my own.
Yeah.
And it's not something I would have ever willingly chose to do.
Living on base isn't like a friendly place to live.
No, it's very barren, very boring, very
a lot of stress going on.
Yeah.
You get yelled at a lot for no reason.
Yeah.
But we can talk about that another time.
So, anyways, it's not something I would have willingly chose to do,
No.
but I'm glad that it happened to me, if that makes sense, because I learned a lot about myself that year, that I could do it. I think it was a confidence building year for me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is crappy, like really crappy, but it was fine. It actually wasn't that bad. Like I did okay. The time went by. I was able to make friends like just by myself.
Yeah.
Which was kind of cool. I'd never done that. I'd never made friends without soccer or without you.
Yeah.
And it was neat. For the first time, I was making organic friends on my own.
Yeah.
So I think it was a good confidence building year.
Yeah, I can see that.
And financially, we weren't saving as much money with me moving down there and working while Bryce was deployed, but
I'll make a deployment money.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Talk about the difference in making deployment money, how it is pretty significant because the hazard pay and the non-taxable pay over there.
So you have like your base pay, and then depending on what your job is, you get enhancements. Like I was in the airborne units, we had airborne pay.
Sure.
Which, funny enough, I was looking at an inflation chart. It was like, whatever. It was just like, it wasn't that much more than it was in the 70s.
Oh.
And so it was just shit pay. We thought it was a lot, but it was an extra like $180 a month.
Yeah.
Where I think inflation adjusted, it should have been like $800.
Jeez,
But anyways, that's a different conversation. So there's that. There was like hazard pay when you get deployed to a war zone, and then there was.
I think the hazard pay was $500 extra.
Yeah, that was really good. And again, too, in relation, like, we're not making that much. So that's not a lot of money, but percentage-wise, it's a big increase. We're talking about 30-40% increase in money.
Sure.
Don't quote me on that number. I just pulled that out of my head. And then obviously non-tax, and there's some other stuff too. I can't remember, but yeah. So it's a big pay bump.
Yeah. But for us, again, at that time...
And you're not spending money either. Yeah.
I would say we'd like to give ourselves credit and say that we were thinking financially at that time, but I don't think we were. It was all emotional decisions. So I think right now these conversations are kind of fun for us because we're kind of reliving the situation on what we should have been thinking about financially. Yeah,
we weren't thinking. It was more just like, hey, I've got $200. Let's go to the local Mexican restaurant and go get some cervezas.
But we did start thinking because I think we talked about this in the military. It is skewed because it gives you this perception of everything being taken care of for you, even though
I 100% agree with that.
The standard isn't like people will complain about the standard the government provides you when you're in the military, which is true to an extent. But you do have everything taken care of you. You're not making payments. You're just, here's a house. You don't even have to pay for it. It's just like...
The shitty part is that it might be the worst house in history. And we have a funny story about a flooding, but we can... actually, let's save like that. That's a big conversation. That's a fun one, I think. But you're right. Like, I think at that point in time, our financial intelligence was... Paid the paycheck. I make more money. I spend more money.
Yeah.
Like, it was very like just binary. Make more, spend more. It was just like there was no. It was but I.
And at this point, we're still only 23. So.
But I think making more money was on my mind. I just didn't know what the hell to do with it.
Yeah.
Like, I remember it was funny. Like, we heard about one guy in the company that had $10,000, and we were like, and everyone talked about like, oh my god, like that was so much money. And I look back, it's like laughable now. But it's like really funny though, because like in comparison, like
at the time
that was a shit ton of money.
You guys made this guy to seem out like a millionaire.
Yeah, like he was like the smartest, like he's been saving for years. It's like this guy's so smart. But it's just funny how like at the point in time and it compounds, right? And, and
it's all relative. That was a lot of money to us at that time because we had like $800 in our bank.
Yeah, and we're able to laugh about that now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying 10,000 isn't a lot, but I'm saying because since then we've been working hard and compounding and saving and investing.
Yeah,
and we've been able to build a nice nest egg. So it's like now with what we've been able to turn our money into, that is a laughable amount of money.
Yeah,
but if you're starting out, that could be a massive amount. So it's about the context of your life.
Yeah.
And that just shows how all broke we were.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I think exactly like you said, to reiterate, it's not saying that 10,000 isn't a lot. But at that time, that's how poor we were. 10,000 was like $1 million.
It was like unheard of. Like no one else in the company had heard that money. Like, we like chat about it like quietly. Like, did you hear?
Yeah.
Like it was like a dark.
Actually, if you think about it, that was only like a fourth. That was a fourth, which is massive of what you made in a year.
Yeah.
Which is like to save.
Just
up
in your
account,
in your account, you're like, wow, did you hear about this guy? Like, oh my god. So.
So where were we going with that though is just to end my point on that about the military giving you a false reality of like everything being taken care of. That's why I think at that time we still hadn't really practiced active like money making decisions because it was just kind of like the government was taking care of everything for us while we were in the military.
Yeah.
But I will say is there's some stuff that happens in between that we'll get to in a second, but when we did start actively making financial decisions was when we were prepping to get out of the military. We were like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
We're not going to have the government anymore wiping our asses for us.
Yeah.
We're going to be in DC on our own. Both don't have jobs, moving up there. How do we set ourselves up for success? And we started having those conversations 6 months before you got out.
Yeah, and we knew we wanted to buy a house,
too. Pretty mature of us. Yeah, because then we started doing the car moving and shaking, which allowed us to cash out even more money.
Get a loan. Yeah.
So, but we'll get to that after we talk about our house flooding. When I very first moved down to Georgia, it was like, welcome to Columbus. Your house is going to flood and you're going to be carrying all your stuff on your shoulders outside of your basement.
This is a good story for anyone that thinks that like government housing, this is like why capitalism works, because if you want better, you can get better.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah,
true.
We can say that.
No, that's a good point, because on the military base, we didn't have an option. Per Bryce's rank, there were only select few houses available to us.
Oh, and I hate that lady. Oh, if I see her, I would punch her in the face. If I remember, I would call her out.
We're not going to go. I don't want to get mad. It's going to make me mad. So I don't want to talk about that too much. I just want to talk about the silliness and funniness that ensued. Yeah,
keep it like that. Yeah. So, anyways, I think that was good. I think that was...
Oh, we're not going to tell the story right now? You don't want to...
No, I think we can save it for next time. So, yeah, I guess in summary, back to the original point, it's just when you're making those decisions to split, it's like you have to think about the emotional context of it.
Sure.
And you have to put like an end date on it. I think
does the financial outweigh for the time being, and how long is the suck worth? Is the length of the suck, is it maintainable for the success it's going to give you at the end of the tunnel?
And it only matters too if you still have that money. Like if you go bust your ass and you end up spending that all on booze and drink and food, whatever, it's for nothing. So I think it's like the emotional weight of that decision has to balance out. Hey, I made an extra $30,000. I can't see my hands. An extra $30,000. And then I did it, and then I invested this stuff, and then grew this nest egg. Yeah, I think that is what the algebraic equation in your head should be.
Yeah.
Like that is like what benefit am I enhancing myself in the future for this sucking situation right now?
And
that's delayed gratification.
This is just not necessarily a warning is the right word, but a heed of caution is don't just get caught up on the, oh my gosh, they're going to pay me $200K for a 6-month contract. Weigh in the cost to maintain your lifestyle while you're away, your family's here. You're essentially paying for 2 lifestyles. So really do like a cost balance sheet before you accept something like that. Don't just get caught up on the shiny. Kind of actually similar to the conversation we had in a previous episode about weighing the health benefits and everything that you get with the salary. Same exact thing. I think 1099 people, they're probably more practiced in it now, but if you're a new 1099er and you don't usually have to weigh in all your other costs if you're doing, abroad work or whatever, just take it into consideration, because you might not be making as much as that sum lump looks.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. And I think we should maybe call it there. I think that was good. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Right, everyone. Well, thanks for joining us at Iron Bay Research. We will see you guys next time.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you guys for watching. If you liked this and want more, subscribe or comment below. We'll see you here next time on Iron Bay Research. Bryce and Kara signing out.